do you have any regrets of the way that you framed this, particularly on the abuse of power charge?
No,
that you did not have a bipartisan acquittal on that front.
There was one vote on one count that was against the president. So we're pleased that the case has been acquitted. The president was found not guilty and was acquitted. So that's all we say.
You didn't get any Democratic votes like Joe Manchin or Kristen?
Let me tell you, it's a joke I said a long time ago. Here's the truth. I had a case at the Supreme Court, not in front of John Roberts, its predecessor. We had lost below. The Chief Justice at some point in the argument asked me, what do you want us to do? I said, I don't know, somewhere I'd like it to say reversed. Same thing here. Our goal was to get an acquittal, to have the president found not guilty. We did our job. Last question.
Will you continue to work for the president, Jay?
There were a lot of different arguments you guys made. Is there one that you think was the strongest one that you wanted to lead?
No, I think that we had a lot of lawyers on our team, as the House managers did, presenting different arguments that would resound with, that would impact different senators. So I don't think you could say this argument worked better than that argument. I don't think that's the way it is. Thanks, everybody.
What's your message to the American people, many of whom polling tells us believe should have been removed from office today?
Well, the Constitution, what the founders envisioned, shows the exact opposite. And I also think that I don't believe there's polling that shows a majority of Americans thought the president should be removed today. There's been polls back and forth. You know what? The polls at this point do not matter. What matters is the acquittal that the Chief Justice gavelled in. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. Oh, you're great. You're totally fine. I'm good.
You just laid out. Real victory for the president. He said it before, that was a real victory today. That the American people went off the Constitution, the office of the president. It was also close to the
Good to see you.
You were on the front page today.
Oh, I was?
Yeah, I sent it to your office.
Good. Well, the inevitable result of impeachment is here. President Trump has been acquitted. The majority of the Senate voted not guilty on both articles. It was evident when this impeachment proceeding began in the House of Representatives, when it began as a purely partisan affair, this was going to be the ultimate conclusion. Today, the Senate followed the rule of law, followed the Constitution. Today, the Senate delivered on our oath and delivered on our duty to demand of any articles of impeachment that they demonstrate treason, bribery, or other high crimes or misdemeanors. The House managers failed to prove their case, and for that reason, the Senate rightfully acquitted President Trump.
Senator Cruz, wondering if you have a reaction to Mitt Romney voting to good pigs and the push by Don Jr. to have him expelled from the GOP?
I think Mitt's decision was a mistake. I disagree with him on it. At the end of the day, every senator has to make his or her decision as to how we will comply with the obligations of the Constitution.
Senator, 850 legal scholars said that Trump did commit impeachable acts. Who all did you guys consult other than Alan Dershowitz?
Well, I got to say, having spent several years teaching as an adjunct professor at the University School of Law, I'm surprised they only found 850 law professors. Law faculties at just about every law school in the country are extraordinarily liberal. They're all on the left, so they would assign that position probably before President Trump was sworn into office. As for that matter, would have most congressional Democrats. Indeed, a number of congressional Democrats were calling for President Trump's impeachment within days of his election, before he'd taken the oath of office, before he'd ever had a phone call with Ukraine, before he'd committed any facts. This was a political impeachment. It was a political impeachment driven by Democrats who were angry at the American people for electing President Trump. And you know, we saw that last night at the State of the Union. We saw the bitter anger as congressional Democrats refused to applaud for record low unemployment, refused to applaud for 12,000 new factories in America, refused to applaud for record low African American unemployment, record low Hispanic unemployment, record low unemployment for young people and women. And congressional Democrats right now, unfortunately, seem to be just consumed by hatred for President Trump. I think last night was encapsulated by the very end of the speech when Nancy Pelosi stood up and ripped the speech in half. That was a sad, sad moment in the history of the United States Congress. It demonstrated contempt, not just for President Trump, but for the office of the presidency and the American people who elected him. It was certainly not how I behaved when I attended State of the Union addresses by President Obama. I think we owe a certain respect, a certain civility to each other. And I gotta say, a party that is simply consumed by hate and not willing to celebrate the victories of the American people, the jobs, the rising opportunity, the rising wages, the rising prosperity of the American people, that's a really unfortunate place we find ourselves.
Do you think it's fair for Senator Romney to be facing calls that he should leave the party over this vote?
Listen, I think in the world of politics, whatever one does, there's criticism, and Mitt Romney ultimately is accountable to the voters of the state of Utah, and he made his decision. As I said, I think it's a mistake. I disagree with him. I believe the constitutional standard that every one of us is obliged to follow is whether or not the House managers demonstrated high crimes or misdemeanors. They didn't meet that standard. And the fundamental reason is that a president always has the authority to investigate credible allegations of corruption. In this case, there was more than sufficient evidence of corruption for the president to ask for an investigation. All right, thank you, guys.
The fact that the presidential nominee of a political party votes guilty and not one member of that political party follows him tells you a lot about the fear that does the business in the United States Senate. That they're scared of talk radio, they're fearful of Fox, they're fearful the President of the United States will campaign against them in a primary, and it tells you a whole lot about how fear does the business.
Did you talk to Senator Manchin about his decision?
I've talked to my colleagues all week. I've talked to lots of Republicans too, and I know that many of the ones I've talked to privately, and I can't disclose individual conversations, of course, have said that they know Trump lies a lot. They know this was serious. They accept the evidence. They just, in the end, can't stand up and do the right thing for their country.
Any insight on why he voted the way he did?
Why? I ask him. Because I think the preponderance of evidence was so great. You could see Romney, Senator Romney clearly didn't want to vote against his party. The first one in history, the first president, the first senator in history to vote. And so you can see that, and he came to a very sober decision.
Should the House Intelligence Committee call John Bolton now? Should they subpoena him?
Step on up, Senator.
Hey.
Explain how you arrived at your decision.
Let me, y'all, I'll just say it one time, okay?
Can you explain how you arrived
Yeah,
at your decision?
I will say that. I've always, first of all, I've taken 2 oaths since I've been a senator. One oath has been to defend and protect the Constitution. The second oath was to do impartial judgment. And I took an oath to God to do that. And I think, hopefully I've done that. And I've always said, if I can go home and explain it, I can vote for it. If I can't explain it, I vote against it. I can explain my vote based on the evidence that was presented. Under oath, the evidence was given to us under oath by the testimonies from the witnesses that they were able to secure, and the documents that we saw. And common sense would tell me, after the transcript, that a phone call from the most powerful person in the world to the most inexperienced leader of a country that's facing Russian aggression would be very much intimidated, and that's not who we are. And I have said before, I said, you can't go around, and we can't be the country we are trying to encourage countries to accept democracy and enjoy the freedoms and liberties that we all have enjoyed by using that for a political favor. You can't do that. That's not who we are. So it was very clear. The president said he could not get a fair trial in the House. I wanted to make sure he got a fair trial in the Senate. And I've never seen a trial if somebody wants to defend themselves with their defense counsel not bringing witnesses and documents that would be able to do that. So when I look at everything, there was no other conclusion that I could come to. As much as I knew as divisive as it would be, as difficult as it would be, but it's not a political decision. It's based on, could I go home and face the oath I took, go home and face my family, my friends, and the good Lord that I swore to. Couldn't do it.
Did President Trump communicate with you during this process at all?
No.
Are you worried about how it will play out with voters?
Well, you know, if I've said if I couldn't explain it, I would be worried. If I did a political vote, I would be worried. But the people that are going to be upset with me because of the vote, if they give me a chance to explain what I'm dealing with, you know, I know back where I come in West Virginia, if I'm innocent, give me a chance to defend myself. Give me a chance to prove to you I'm innocent.
Do you think they will?
Well, no, I don't mean that. I mean in the trial.
Yeah.
My goodness, you picked that one up wrong. I mean if you accuse me of something, and that never happened. So the evidence I have was overwhelming.
You think you can explain to them, though?
I mean, can you explain to them exactly?
Sure.
And you think they'll listen to you?
Well, you know, only thing I can do is they know me. They've known me for 37 years in public service as their governor and secretary of state and everything else. So I think they'll trust me from that end up. They might not agree, and I've said this. As long as we all, as public servants, we owe all of you, the free press, everybody, an explanation. Whether you agree or not, that's not my job. My job is to give you the facts and the truth, and you're going to say, I don't agree, but at least I understand he had a process.
Senator, had you decided by the time Senator Romney had announced his decision?
Oh, yes, my speech was written.
What did you think of his decision?
What did you think of his decision?
I thought it was very powerful, very encouraging. But Mitt's a dear friend of mine, and we've been talking, and I knew he'd been struggling also, but the facts are overwhelming.
Can you talk a little bit about those discussions?
No, not really. No, it's been a dear friendship. Good friendship.
Did any of your colleagues help you arrive to this conclusion?
No, but even to tell you one thing, and I will say this, all 100 senators, no matter what side you were on, respected everyone, how difficult a decision this was. This is the most difficult decision I have ever had to make. I've never sat in a jury. I've never been on jury duty. So I've never had to stand up and say guilty or not guilty. That was really powerful to have to do that. But they've been also, I think everyone's been so great. I just pray to the good Lord, wish we never had to get to this, to where there was a trial or need to be one. And I pray that the president understands this is not a political vote whatsoever. It's not whether I like the president. I've always had a good relationship. But I love my country, and I have an obligation, responsibility for my duties to my country. And if I can't explain that, then shame on me. That's who I am.
Senator, do you think, when you were thinking about this, was part of your decision deciding whether you're going to face voters again, whether you
not at all.
Continue
if this was a political decision, it was the wrong decision anybody made if it was political. If it was a conviction based on the facts we had to deal with and based on the Constitution and the oath that we took, I can respect that, and I would assume everyone made that based on what they feel. I give everybody that consideration.
Senator Collins said she believes the president has learned a lesson from this trial. Do you share that belief?
I would pray to the good Lord. You know, I didn't see that lesson learned last night, but I would pray that it starts today. Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Senator.
you. Thank you.
I just want to say, as disappointed as I was in this vote, the man you just heard and others on our side and Mitt Romney give me hope for the future. And I think Americans, as cynical and distrustful as they may be of politicians, and understandably so, should take some heart from the stories of heroes and profiles in courage that they've seen today. This vote is no vindication, it's no real acquittal, it's no victory, because unfortunately the president blocked the evidence from coming forward, and my Republican colleagues aided and abetted that cover-up. So it is, in that sense, a sad and shameful day, but there are genuine stories here that should give the American people heart.
Senator, isn't that exactly how the president will see it, as acquittal and vindication? That's the
The
message
president
that he will
sees
give to
everything.
voters.
The president sees everything through his own lens, and often it is literally his own and nobody else's. So the president may see it however he wants, but the American people should know that they were denied the full and complete truth. There was overwhelming evidence in favor of guilt. That's the reason that Mitt Romney voted guilty on the first article of impeachment, but they were denied the full story.
Senator, in the earlier phases of this process, the Republicans made a lot of hay out of the fact that Democrats had joined them in the House to vote against impeachment. We saw the opposite result today. Democrats stuck together, one Republican joined. What difference does that make? He's still acquitted, but is there a difference that is made based on this result?
What's most important about this trial is the American people saw corrupt abuse of power for the personal gain of the president. That's the story here. The ultimate verdict is no vindication. It's meaningless in terms of guilt or innocence, because the American people will draw their own conclusions from what they saw. And as we've said many times to juries, don't leave your common sense at the door. The president can spin it any way he wants, but the evidence, the facts, the witnesses all told the truth.
Is it important to history there was a bipartisan finding of guilt, or majority of guilt?
I think it is the first trial, it is the first Senate impeachment trial where guilt was voted on a bipartisan basis for one of these articles. I think that is a historic step, undeniable by the president, and the partisan divisions, I think, are overcome by that fact.
And how brave was Mitt Romney to do that?
You know, I have been moved genuinely, even to tears, very few times in this body, but I was riveted by his words. I said to myself, what you're watching is history. This is why you came here. This is the kind of decision that takes backbone and grit, and that's what the people of America want in politicians. That's why I think, as deeply outrageous as many of these facts are, as disappointing, there is some cause and reason for hope here, and faith.
Were you watching it live?
I was watching it live.
With any other Democrats?
Sorry?
Were you watching it with any other Democrat colleagues?
I watched Doug Jones. I will tell you, I've never seen a better argument to a jury than Doug Jones. And I was moved as well. When I thought about what he would face going home from a lot of his constituents, many of us on both sides, because obviously this issue is very profoundly emotional.
Did you say you were moved to tears by Romney?
Yes.
You were moved to tears by Romney's speech?
I was moved to tears by the idea that someone was standing for principle and conviction.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.